So let's start off with the very disturbing situation of security, particularly in northeast Nigeria, but we've also seen events in other parts of the country. And as you can see, we're joined on the program by Professor Anthony Killer, Commonwealth Institute Director, Jean Monnet, Professor of Strategy and Development, is right here with us in our latest studio, as well as Mr. Onyekachi Adekoya, CEO, Aquiline Intelligence and Security Consultant. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Let me just take a quote from what Professor Babagana Zulum said, by the way, over the night, because it said that he had to keep a vigil in Marte local government area just to keep it from falling and to mobilize security. And this is what he said, part of what he said. He said that hitherto, Marte local government comprises over 300 towns and villages. Now we have only one standing. Only one standing. So it's almost like we've come full circle to where we were pre-2015. Maybe I'll start with Professor Killer before I come to you, because I know you might have intelligence. From professor to professor, a professor is here literally crying out to the federal government, do not allow Marte fall. Just one community out of over 300. What exactly do you make of this?
Well, I think, the idea you say professor is doing it. First of all, allow me to call people's attention to the very shallow and erratic conception to think that if you're a professor or a man of theory, you're just theory. You're not involved in practice. It's because we undermine the profession and take bad examples. In reality, the gown and the town meet all the time. And it is the duty, and I say this to young, aspiring intellectuals, it is the duty of intellectuals to take the forefront on every action, not just read or write about it. You have to be involved and where possible, be in the front, like Professor Gabi is doing. The situation is law of nature. You see, in life, if you don't do anything, if you don't do enough, bad things prevail. What has happened is that there is a war going on between anti-state and the state. And the state has not upped this game. And the anti-state continues to move on. What has happened is that there's a difference, I think, in the past 2 years, compared juxtaposed with the last 8 years. The last 2 years has had less, before now, less reporting, less emphasis on insecurity than we had, say, in the last 10 years. So, Jonathan Buhari administration, juxtaposed to the Tinubu administration. Especially during the Jonathan administration, then the Buhari administration, we were all talking about insecurity a lot. Now we talk about it less. Then all of a sudden, it's exploding in our eyes. It will appear as if terrorists and bandits and narcissists or attention-seeking people, where we don't talk about them, they want to remind us that they are there. But psychology aside, in terms of the material thing, fact is, if we're losing territory, it undermines the essence of the state. When any kind of force, be it terrorists, be it bandits, can claim part of your territory, it's like a bit of like receding hair. It tells you you're not the same anymore when you lose part of it. And I think it's really serious food for thought. There are things that needs to be done, which I'm sure we'll look at later, but the static image or snapshot or selfie of the situation is terrorist 1, government 0.
Mr. Onyekachi, 20,000 people are said to have left Marte to the neighboring community. You see sometimes what happens in other climes. As far back as 2001, after the 9/11 attack, you see that the U.S. had drones. 2001, that's how many years ago? That's about 24 years ago. They had drones that they were able to deploy to Afghanistan. In fact, that was what basically helped them to push Taliban out of Afghanistan at that point, out of Kabul. They didn't have enough ground support, but they had drones 24 years ago. So we're in 2025, and here we are, terrorists taking control of literally a whole local government area, only one community standing, and it is 2025. What do you make of what is happening in Marte? Goza came under attack, I think 2 weeks prior. We don't know what is next, but it looks like, as he said, terrorist 1, government 0.
Okay, thank you. And It's a bit difficult when you look at the language of it all. In the case of Taliban and Afghanistan, need I remind the viewers that the Taliban is back to Afghanistan now, despite America spending about $4 trillion. If you put in all, it spent about $11 trillion prosecuting the war in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and Libya, and some parts of Syria. Only for the HTS group now to be back in Syria. You know, at the time, the current head of state for Syria had a $10 million bounty on his head. Just a few days ago, Donald Trump shook hands with him. That's to say that the non-kinetic element to counterterrorism, we need to begin to look at it a bit more seriously. Because
just to be clear, pardon me, to put it in context, they did that to ensure that the Taliban or Al-Qaeda would not attack the U.S. again. They got Osama bin Laden. The point is that they're not able to attack the U.S. or be a threat.
That's not correct.
Active threats to
That's
the U.S.
not correct.
Have we seen the 9/11 happen again on that scale?
I mean, you can also go into the arguments of how did the 9/11 happen, who were the actors, you know. We don't want to go into some of those details now. But the U.S. Department of Homeland Security would not say the U.S. is not under threat. If you go to the Homeland Security page today, you will see the language. The U.S. is under the constant threat of a terrorist attack. So it comes back to language, which is the point I'm making. If you say Mate, for example, and some of the communities there in the Northeast, what we're seeing is a shaping. In military language, it's called a shaping or a probing operation. The non-state actors are probing the defenses of the Nigerian military in the area, shaping into something bigger. We suspect that perhaps Angala may be next, or one of the objects of the attack. Again, they've not held the territory, although some bases were sacked. It also happened when you had a planned troop change. So there was a change in leadership from battalion commander, tactical level, all at the same time. And again, it takes some time for some of these commanders to get a hold of what is happening on the ground. It has also happened at a time when perhaps the military has taken its foot off the gas a bit, because in the last 2 years, there's been relative peace in the Northeast. Relative, I say, because the actors were held up to the Lake Chad Basin axis. Again, we had about 3 divisions at the time, fully resourced. When you talk about division strength size or battalion strength size, I wouldn't think that the theater command has the full complement of personnel, assets, and resources that they should have. The Nigerian Army will not come out to tell you the challenges they are having, because matters of security are shrouded in some level of secrecy. So I sense that, it's an all-of-government problem. The governor on his own part wants to resettle a lot of communities. Good, he's making those efforts. But that also increases the area of responsibility of the forces on the ground, because, again, it makes it a bit more cumbersome when you have a lot more to cover for and you don't have the required tooling, personnel, or resources to do some of those. So there are a number of challenges that basically is a Nigerian problem that goes beyond the army. And I want to make the point this morning that we have an action plan and a policy framework for preventing first and countering violent extremism. I think that document was set up in 2016 or 2017 or so. There's no report to show that that policy framework has been reviewed. So governance of security is a problem. The resourcing of security is a problem. And in our knee-jerk approach, we just whip the military at every problem. Counter-terrorism should be something for the police, not the army. And the army keeps failing at some of this because it takes good policing job to deal with counter-terrorism. Counterinsurgency, perhaps the military.
What's the difference? Counter-terrorism, counterinsurgency.
So when you're dealing with an insurgent group, that's a group that's taken up arms against the state. When you're dealing with a terrorist group, you're dealing basically with an armed criminal group. You don't bring in the military.
But it's also against the state.
No, not necessarily, because, if we had enough time, this is a transnational criminal network. The way they operate, when they hold territory, They run a very robust taxation system. There's report now, if you look at Human Angle did a report on the fantastic report I read, by the way.
That's Human Go.
Human Go, yes. On the fact that they are not even going into cryptocurrency and layer the system of the macroeconomic system they operate. At the heart of that criminal group is macroeconomic interest. Forget the clothing in religion, as they call it. You did hear President Donald Trump in Saudi Arabia, make some comments to the fact that anybody killing anybody in the name of God, should raise a suspicion. It doesn't matter the religion you belong to, because these things are not basically religion. They're a criminal network. They have a transnational outlook to it, and they are pursuing their own interests. So the police is able to go into the communities, gather intelligence, and address these issues. Let me just land with the fundamental problem we have. We removed the Ministry of Police Affairs. We removed the governance of police from the Ministry of Interior. We created a separate ministry for police. But what we need is a robust Department for Homeland Security, which is what the Ministry of Interior should be. So I'm suggesting, let's take back the Ministry of Police Affairs, bring it back under the Ministry of Interior, and let the Ministry of Interior begin to work a bit more hand in hand with the governors.
Okay. So at the end of the day, it's beyond the issues around, when you talk about Ministry of Interior, beyond the issue of passports and all of that.
Absolutely.
There's a brother, Professor Kila, let's come to you. And while he was talking, two things hit my mind. I want you to speak about the failure or otherwise of intelligence in this regard, because sometimes we dismiss it and then we have to deal with the effects. And then we're pulling out all the armory we can and getting all of these casualties at the end of the day, which is why they got the flags from, the DSS got the flags from the recent engagement with Professor Patutomi. So talk to us about what you see as the challenge with intelligence in terms of relating with communities that are affected. I also want you to layer that on the issue of diagnosing the problem correctly, because I think that also is a problem. And I'll throw that question to you as well.
Well, I think you're spot on when you bring in the issue of intelligence. There is a fundamental flaw in our security system in this country, and that is that it appears that our state security, whether it's intelligence, whether it's enforcement, tend to come alive when there is something against the people in power. They seem to be more alert if you insult the wife of somebody or somebody in power, rather than the everyday nitty-gritty intelligence services. So to where you stopped at the other time, after 9/11, there were visible measures that was inspired by not again in America. There was a fundamental rule that we're not going to allow this again. It's a mindset that goes back to the Second World War. You bomb us, we destroy your country totally. True, those are not asymmetric battles, warfares, as we're doing now, Those are country to country. But the mindset that to be there. So something is missing. After the first attacks in Nigeria, we've not seen policies, infrastructure, deployment, plans that shows that something new has happened to us. Let us change our way. Again, I go back to what you were saying earlier on. Drones were introduced 25 years ago. We've not seen in our intelligence service, we've not seen a surge in CCTV. We've not seen a surge in intelligence gathering. And it tells you that we do not have that strategic view. Maybe we have it inside us. Maybe some experts have it, but they're not being implemented. I truly agree that the way to prevent attacks is intelligence gathering, and is also socio-economical things that people like to talk about, win hearts and minds, create jobs, engage them. Very well. But I also think we need to spy on them, to use very clear words, so that we're a step ahead of them, and I think we're not doing that enough. I also believe in brute force against terrorism and banditry. The essence of a state is the possession and the ability to deploy legitimate and superior force. People should know, especially when we mention transnational, people should know that it is unsafe for you to commit crime in Nigeria because we have a brutal army, police. And by the way, I believe that where we are, we need joint forces. We should not be separating police or army at the moment. What we need to have is a disciplined army that knows how to do police job. Because when we're dealing with international conflict, albeit asymmetric, it is not pure investigation. So to that extent, the issue of intelligence that you say is very fundamental, but it's a foundational issue. You build on that to avoid, you use that to identify, but we need to see the physical brute force of a superior entity. And that's what we're not seeing yet. Nigerian army, Nigerian police, our custom and everybody, they have the limitation. I believe that we're dealing with agencies that are understaffed, ill-equipped, overworked, underpaid, and they have a lot of issues. And yet, I do not believe that they cannot overpower bandits and terrorists if well deployed.
What do you think is making this to thrive? It's a straight, simple question.
It's not layers. You are asking a simple question to a wicked problem. So it's a multifaceted, hydra-headed problem. We can pick at so many things. What's the incentive to crime like? What's the criminal justice system like? How many people are being prosecuted, arrested for these acts? The number of issues. And I beg to differ respectfully that we have an intelligence problem. We do not have an intelligence problem, but I heard the prof say that it's in the implementation. The DSS, again, let me remind Nigerians, has a station chief in every local government, the 704 local government we have in Nigeria.
Sorry for cutting in. The reason I jumping on prof's thought.
Yes.
As far as regular people are concerned.
Yes.
And the way we assess things, we're not interested in efforts. When we see results, we can now, if you like, have intelligence in my parlor. I don't care.
Correct.
But if somebody
still steals in my house and goes scot-free, it doesn't make sense.
To make the point is, you asked, how do you solve the problem?
Yes.
Look at Kaduna State, for example. Since the election of Governor Obasani, I think he was on your station 2 days ago, so I watched his interview.
I interviewed him last night.
Yeah, last night. So, fantastic. So you asked a question, how has he been able to douse the tension in southern Kaduna? And all he said to you pointedly was leadership. He made up his mind to be a governor for the entirety of the state, not for one sect, not for one ethnic group. I always make the point that the missing piece in our jigsaw, national security jigsaw puzzle, are the governors. When I talked about a robust department for Homeland Security or the Ministry of Interior, matters first of internal security should not be the business of the president. There is a CSO, CEO in the state where the governor has sufficient interest and political will, he can deal with the issues. I listened to Zanfar governor, who was talking about the gains they are making in Zanfar. What had changed? He set up his own local security network, resourced it, and is going about it in a way he thinks will work. But there's a problem. Because as in Benue, remember when Otoma and Susan had an issue? And what happened afterwards was that Benue was awash with issues of insecurity just because there was a bit of a political tussle. While the governor in Zanfar is trying to do right by the state, he's having an issue with his predecessor, which will snowball into some political calculation on their part. What do we see in Nigeria? 2027 is around the corner. We come here for election analysis year in, year out. And the election season is coming. Another Chibok-style event is afoot. It will happen. I'm not a prophet of doom. But
that's scary.
No. This is how we play the politics in Nigeria. So it comes back again to the politicians, how they play the politics, and the inability, as it were, of the state to deal decisively with the issues. Part of the problem with the state is that the federal government is overwhelmed. And when you lose nuance at the grassroots level, you can't build something on nothing.
But can I say something? I like it when you use the term leadership. There is nothing happening to a governor, a president, or senator that is so original that cannot be foreseen. And I want our viewers to think about that very well. If you say that election period, people are going to use the security, then the person charged and paid to take care of security should be a step ahead of that. People will steal everything you have if they have the chance. The reason why they don't steal it is because you don't allow them to steal it. You keep your phone very carefully. You keep your bag, you lock your house. Let the people who charge and pay do that for Nigeria, do it. There's an example I always give in my classes, allow me to use it here, when we talk about strategy of security. The most attractive thing to people in the world is money. That is one thing that, given the chance, cash, raw cash, people like to take away. The house of raw cash is banks. But guess what? Banks are the least looted place in the world. You know why? Because banks have people who take measures to avoid stealing money in banks, i.e. robbery. You don't go there and grab money, whereas the trader, the person traveling, can be pickpocketed. So the fact that there are people who want to kill us because of election, who want to kill us because of their religion, who wants to kill us because they don't like us, who cares their intention? What matters is our ability to stop them. Or rather, what we're having is our inability to stop them. And we need to look at that well.
Prof, you make a very valid point. So maybe it's then also partly the value we place on human lives. Because we know that the money in the bank is really valuable.
Correct. Yeah.
We push all of the security, both technology, human, everything, different layers. Yeah. But when it comes to humans, that's when you hear excuses like, these are ungoverned spaces. Nigeria is so big.
Remember, there was a carnage on the plaza in Benue. Emergency was not declared, but a pipeline went off in Rivers.
Let me make a point. Let me make a point to add to what Prof said. When you use the analogy of the bank, we do a lot of audits and security support for the banks. Yeah. And the banks spend a lot of money on security.
Well,
the budget...
Because they care about money.
Yes.
Maybe we need people who care about life.
No, the point is, the budget for some FMCGs operating in Nigeria, oil and gas interests, their security budget. I mean, if you imagine them, it's more than the security budget of some states. We don't pay enough attention to security. That's the point I want to make. When you talk about the people responsible, who are the people responsible? Let's dimension that.
We start from you.
NSCDC.
Then we go
No, that's fine. Let's come. NSCDC, the police, the army, the Air Force. It will interest Nigerians to know that some of the state commands don't get more than 100,000 a month to operate a statewide command to protect you and I when we sleep every night. When was the last time we heard that we invested significantly in the Nigerian police force, change their weapons?
Security per capita now?
Oh yeah, there's something called securitics.
There is, yes.
There's a mathematics of security.
There's actually an equation for that.
Oh really?
In which we look at the population of the country, the space, and we're able to calculate how much do we need to spend.
And here goes my question. Yeah. I just wanted to situate that, because again, you hear, and I have to go back. Americans will tell you one life. You know what they deploy to protect one life.
Absolutely.
You know the kind of
Israel.
there are a lot of countries that you can look to and see how they value human life. But maybe it's just because it looks like numbers here. 20 people died. You just think it's numbers. You don't see people. So that's a fundamental issue. But back to the talk of leadership, because you talked about, both of you have talked about governors and the leaders, basically the responsibility they have. Is this an issue that Governor Babagana Zulum can handle to a large extent? And I say on his own rather advisedly. Is this something that he can do more to handle? Because you've talked about the governors, and I want both of you to speak to it. What more can he do as a governor? You say CSO, but they tell you no, that's on paper.
No.
It's a title.
No, you know, let me make a point for Nigerians to know and understand. The governor is in command. He has the command at the state level. He is the chairman of the State Security Council. What he does not have is the control, but he has command. Control rests with the president, commander-in-chief. Control command.
What's the difference? Because what is command without control? What is control without command?
So the control is with the man who plays the piper. Now, in the Constitution, command has been ceded to the state level, at the subnational level, with the governors.
What is command? So break it down for me. What is command?
The governor can come up with an initiative and say, I want a joint task force. The service heads has to follow that lawful order. Create the initiative.
Until the man who has control changes his mind.
So in the case where the man who has control has not changed his mind, and then the governor has the wherewithal to do what he needs to do. I don't want to say some things on that. Some governors employ vigilante groups. They don't pay them every month in this country. Some of them pay them 20,000 naira, 30,000 naira a month. You give a man a rifle, and that's what you do. Some of them don't listen to the advice of the service heads in the states. They don't resource them. And all they come out when there are issues, they say it's okay, it's a religious group, it's the political opponents, or one nonsense, forgive my language, or the other. Remember that Nigeria does not operate, Nigeria operates what is called a kakistocracy, with profound respect. We are not ruled by the best of us or the smartest of us. Security is like medicine. It's like any other profession. Just because you become a governor overnight doesn't mean that automatically you become a security expert. So you must also look at the knowledge gap. There are a number of issues, we don't have the time to dimension them. But to land on the point that the prof has made, that when you have people who are responsible, when you ill-equip them, you ill-resource them, they won't use their teeth to protect you. On the checkpoints we all pass on the roads, when was the last time you saw a properly kitted policeman with bulletproof vest? But every time they kill a policeman, they collect his rifle. The rifle has more value than his life. But that's the man that's supposed to protect you.
It's funny how we've come back to that fundamental point on value of human life. And it cuts across. It really cuts across. Gentlemen, this is a conversation we will definitely have again. Hopefully, on better terms.
With both of them.
Both of you, really, because we have to anchor at this point. But we need to thank you so much, because I think this has pointed to a very important issue that I think that we can follow up with Professor Anthony Killer, Commonwealth Institute Director, Jean Monnet, Professor of Strategy and Development, as well as Mr. Onyekachi Adekoya, CEO, Aquiline Intelligence and Security Consultant. We have to thank you so much for your time this morning. Thank you. Well, while we keep watching what's playing out in Borno State and other parts of the country, we'll take a quick break now. We're back with health and so much more. Stay with us.